Hey everyone, it's Eddie Kalegi reminding you that each and every episode of Sports Speak is powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a one-stop shop for tickets to concerts, sporting events, and so much more. And now you can use the promo code SportsSpeak on the site to get $20 off your first purchase. So what are you waiting for? SeatGeek, let there be live. And now on to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sports Speak Live, episode 188 here on Sports Speak, powered by SeatGeek. Use the promo code SportsSpeak, all caps, one word, for $20 off your first purchase at checkout. I'm Eddie Kalegi, running it solo. Wanted to get a quick one out because we're in October, the best sports month of the year. We're going to see some sports equinoxes likely, with NHL starting next week, NBA later this month. The NFL season's in full swing, but of course the focus today is the Major League Baseball playoffs, which are set and get started with the wild card round. I wish local broadcasts got to do these games because ESPN covering them all, I'm not the biggest fan of, but we'll see how it goes. Should be an interesting postseason because just like last year, it feels like any of the 12 teams can win it. We're going to talk about all 12 teams. Also, you can follow along on Twitter at SportsSpeak Live with our weekly NFL Pick'em, now with a DraftKings twist. Our fantasy football league's going on too. Tim's got the bragging rights over me for now. I am 1-3 in this fantasy football league. A tough loss to Tim by just 2 points. I just needed Josh Allen to make one more damn play, and I could have potentially won that game and gotten to 2-2. But looks like Tropper and Drew are much worse than me. Drew's tight end is Mark Andrews, who hasn't had a point since week 2, and Tropper has 4 Packers receivers and only 2 running backs on his entire roster, and he's stuck that way until Blake Corum gets hurt or until the Rams have a bye. But irregardless, NFL's not the focus in this episode. It's Major League Baseball, and I got to talk about the thriller yesterday, which was a microcosm of what was a wild twist and turn season for the New York Mets, and I am so happy as a Mets fan. Francisco Lindor, what an incredible moment, hitting that 2-run home run. And if you remember back in April on this show, I was really concerned. I was talking about what an embarrassing time it was for the franchise. They started 0-5. They couldn't hit. They couldn't pitch. And worst of all, the team told the fans that their goal was to be competitive by 2025, essentially ruling out this year and saying that this was a non-competitive tank year, which is a horrible, horrible thing to say, even when that is your plan. But the Mets defied them. Carlos Mendoza has proved himself as a manager, and the team clutched up so many players you got to be grateful for on this run. It all starts with Francisco Lindor, the biggest hit of the season in a crazy game of twists and turns, which again is really an emblem of this entire season for the Mets. Down early, the 6-run 8th, Diaz blows it, and then Lindor clutches up with a 2-run bomb, and then Diaz finishes the job. And Francisco, what a season. Again, battling back issues. You can tell he's still in pain. He's out there. He's fighting. I don't believe he's the MVP, but Shohei Ohtani, I don't know if he could do that. Lindor pushes the Mets into the playoffs because, frankly, I know everybody was like, oh, split's inevitable. The other team's going to rest their guys after game 1. I didn't trust the Mets beating the Braves B-teamers. I just didn't. So they needed to win game 1, and they did it thanks to Lindor. Jose Iglesias is incredible. You need him back on this roster next year. And the pitching staff, no aces, no problem. Sean Manaea filled that void. David Peterson delivered the start of his life against the Brewers in the final game of that series to right the ship for the Mets. And Luis Severino, I was critical of the signing. Boy, was I wrong. What a story he's been in this entire lineup. I mean, Pete Alonso has not been great, but he's still the heart and soul of this team with Lindor. Nimmo was huge down the stretch. Vientos was great. Francisco Alvarez at catcher doing the job and got hot at the right time. This entire team came together in a huge way, and I'm so happy. And frankly, whatever happens in the playoffs happens. I did not expect them to be here. I'm just happy I'm getting to watch some postseason baseball. I don't think they match up well against the Brewers. Milwaukee has owned them so far this season, but we'll see how it goes. Again, the hot hand is what matters in this Major League Baseball playoff format, which is why it's so crazy. And that's where I'll transition, because a lot of people will say the 4 teams that have buys look like the best: the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Guardians. But I think we've seen over the last couple of years, there is a competitive disadvantage when it comes to being one of those teams that gets the buy, because then you sit around and wait, and oftentimes you lose. And the teams that were able to build momentum to get into the playoffs and already win a series and are in their regiment and are in their zone, they're the ones that are able to go on a run. So I'd look out for these wild card teams. How crazy is it that the Rangers and Diamondbacks, by the way, both played for the World Series last year and they both miss out? Tough for them. But Texas was just simply not good this year. And Arizona, I mean, that stinks for them. 6 hours of watching baseball with their bags packed, only to find out that both the Mets and the Braves get in, and they're left home sitting around and not getting to play in October. But really interesting matchups here in the wild card round of some teams that could go on deep runs. Astros, Tigers. I got to pick Houston, unfortunately. Detroit, what a run to get into the playoffs. Again, they were helped by the Twins collapsing, but they were amazing too. And this is a team that sold at the deadline and got rid of their best player in Jack Flaherty. And what do they do? This young team goes on a run, and they've got some really, really good players. I love Riley Green. Parker Meadows is really coming to his own. Wenceel Perez has been great for them. Their entire pitching staff has really been working. Jason Foley has turned into one of the best relievers in the American League. They have the potential to go on a run. I don't think it's happening, though. I think they got a bad draw having to play the Astros, who feel like they've been kind of disrespected this year, forgotten about. And this team is still quite good. Their pitching staff has started to get healthy at the right time. Framber Valdez, of course, is going to be the anchor of that. And we always see kind of no-name guys come out of nowhere for the Astros in the playoffs and step up. And they're really starting to see the window start to close. And again, they've accomplished so much in this window. They've won multiple World Series, but it's closing for the Astros and closing fast. This might be Alex Bregman's last run. Jose Altuve is now the second longest tenured player in Major League Baseball with a single team, only behind Mike Trout. So he's getting up there in years. Some of these prospects haven't really panned out the way they would have hoped, notably Jeremy Pena and Chas McCormick. You still got Yordan Alvarez, but the window is closing for the Astros. They see this as their opportunity. They're playing against an inexperienced team, so I'd take the Astros in that series over the Tigers. Other AL series, the Orioles definitely want to bounce back after they were ousted quickly again. After all the magic, the 162 games getting into the playoffs, I'm glad it's not settled by just one game anymore. But the Orioles last year got trounced right away by the Texas Rangers, who went on to win the World Series after such a magical season. I feel like the roster, though, is much better built for a playoff run now. They have some experienced relievers. They have an ace in Corbin Burnes on the mound. And now all of these guys who were young last year are still young, but have tasted playoff baseball before and are ready. And that's a good contrast to the Royals, who I don't think have as good of a bullpen. They don't really have an ace that's quite to the level of Corbin Burnes, though Cole Ragans and Seth Lugo are both very, very good pitchers. And it still bothers me as a Mets fan that they never really gave Lugo a shot as a starting pitcher. But I digress on that. Bobby Witt Jr. might be the best overall, not power hitter, obviously. That's Judge or Ohtani. But in terms of contact hitter, he might be the best one in baseball right now. So I'd look for him to have a great run, but the Royals are just so young. Cool to see them back, but I think the Orioles take care of business here. But again, I might eat my words. If the team's hot, they win two, they can go on a run. Nobody saw the Arizona Diamondbacks going so far last year, and yet they did. That's why I'm not even doing full predictions, frankly, for the playoffs. I'm just excited to watch a couple of weeks of baseball and hope the Mets win a game. On the NL side of things, you know what? No, let me finish with the AL. Yankees, I mean, the inevitable is, can they beat the Astros if they run into them in the playoffs? And the answer is, I don't really know, because I still feel like they have the same flaws. Their bullpen is not good. Clay Holmes sucks. And the offense, besides Judge and Soto, is not reliable or consistent. And Aaron Judge is not reliable in the playoffs. The one boost they have is that Juan Soto absolutely is reliable in the playoffs and has been one of the best postseason hitters in baseball ever since the Nationals won the World Series in 2019. So they are in a better spot, but I don't really know how it's all going to shake out for the Yankees. I do think, though, they are built better than past runs, and they are built better than their competition in the American League to get to the World Series. The Guardians, you know, they've been a magical team this year, but even they have had some struggles at times. The whole AL Central is kind of inflated. We never thought the Central was getting three playoff teams, and a lot of that was helped by the White Sox just being so damn bad this year. But we'll see how the Guardians do. I like their roster. I like their lineup. We'll see. I think they're in a good spot, but I think the Yankees and the Astros, it's probably going to come down to them in the American League. And don't count out the Orioles either, because now they are a bit more battle tested. On the NL side of things, Mets against the Brewers. Milwaukee's owned them, but then again, the Brewers have always not come up clutch in the playoffs. The only time they had a deep run in the last 40 years, for some reason, Craig Counsell pulls Wade Miley 4 pitches into a start, and then they end up losing the game. Like they have had a lot of self-inflicted wounds in the playoffs. They're a young team too. They do have a couple of guys though on that roster who have a history of making big plays in the playoffs, most notably Rhys Hoskins, who has been a tremendous addition to that team, and kind of surprising that the Phillies just let him go. Hoskins has fit in very well in Milwaukee and might be their most important player depending on how far they go in the playoffs. Um, I'll give the Mets credit. I think they are going to ride the hot hand at least for a little bit with Grimace and company. I think they can win at least one game in this series. I think it's going 3, and I'll be optimistic and hope the Mets can win a series. I don't think they're going much past that. Braves and Padres. Atlanta's an interesting team because the vibes are high despite the injuries, and they just got Ozzie Albies back, and he looked incredible. 2-run home run early in what was essentially a playoff game against the Mets, and the bases clearing double that gave them the lead before they gave it up in the 9th. So no Austin Riley, no Ronald Acuna, but they've won a World Series without Acuna before. They don't have Spencer Strider, but Spencer Schwallenbach has fit in just fine. Chris Sale's probably going to win NL Cy Young, so they have a good 1-2 punch in terms of the rotation. So I think the Braves are going to be okay, and I actually like them to upset the Padres. I think San Diego has felt a little too comfortable over the last couple of weeks knowing that nobody's going to catch them, and I think they've been lulled into a sense of comfort that is dangerous when you have a best-of-3 wildcard series against a team that just got in game 162. So I like Atlanta over San Diego. In terms of the two teams ahead of them in the playoffs, the Dodgers, I still have my doubts because every year LA just underperforms in the playoffs besides the 60-game season with an asterisk. And even adding Shohei Ohtani, I don't know what that's going to do, but getting to see Shohei Ohtani play postseason baseball for once is going to be huge. He's never played in the playoffs before, so that's great to see, and I'm curious to see how Ohtani really fits into that lineup. Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts have been very disappointing in the playoffs before, and Freeman's banged up, so we'll see what his health level is and see what Mookie Betts can bring to the table. Pitching staff-wise, Clayton Kershaw is kind of washed. Walker Buehler hasn't looked good this year. It's really going to be about Glasnow, and of course, Yoshi Yamamoto got hurt early in the year, which was a disappointment. Dodgers have a lot of flaws despite having the best record in the league. The Phillies, on the other side, I don't feel like they have too many flaws. They have a really solid rotation anchored by Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, who have come up clutch in the playoffs before. This team knows how to get it done. They made it to the NLCS last year, the World Series the year before that. They've got Bryce Harper. They've got Kyle Schwarber. They've got Trey Turner. They have so many impact players. So I think Philadelphia is poised to go on a run this year. But again, we've seen wild card teams get hot, and that period of just sitting around before the divisional series for the teams that have buys has historically, though a small sample size, has hurt teams before. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm very excited for these playoffs. We are going to have more coverage on SportsSpeak next week. We're also going to talk some NFL because there's a lot to talk about. I don't really feel like getting into the Eagles. They're a disaster. Nick Sirianni has to go. I was very wrong about him. But that's going to do it here for SportsSpeak Live, episode 188. Again, follow us on the Twitter at that handle to follow along with our NFL Weekly Pick'em. Tim will be back next week. We'll dive further into the Major League Baseball playoffs as the Mets will get underway and the Yankees as well. Hopefully the Mets are still alive by that time in the postseason picture. But again, shout out Grimace. Shout out Jose Iglesias. I'm just glad the Amazons are playing in October. I'm Eddie Kalegi signing off here of SportsSpeak Live. Enjoy the opening round of the Major League Baseball playoffs.